ISD and several other Texas school districts to remove the Ten Commandments displays from their classrooms. We'll discuss this and more in today's top stories. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also be joined by Jelani Cobb, acclaimed historian and Pulitzer finalist, who will talk to us about his new book, Three or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here, 2012 to 2025.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also chat with actor Tyler Jordan Wesley about his role in the North American tour of the Tony Award-winning musical, The Outsiders.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The Senate passed a bill forcing the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, sending the measure to President Trump's desk. Trump has said he'd sign it into law. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports the plan drew near unanimous support in the Republican-led Congress.
The Senate quickly approved the bill by voice vote after the plan drew near unanimous support in the House. For much of the year, President Trump fought the release of the government records tied to the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender. But President Trump reversed his stance once the momentum shifted for passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The legislation directs the Justice Department to release the records within 30 days. Allowing limited exceptions to withhold any information. The bill's authors, Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie and California Democrat Ro Khanna, warned the Trump Justice Department will face legal action if it does not fully comply. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
Pope Leo is speaking out against the treatment of immigrants in the United States. NPR's Jason DeRose has more.
Talking to reporters just outside Rome, Leo drew attention to a statement passed by U.S. bishops last week. The pontiff said violence against immigrants is troubling.
We have to look for ways of treating people humanely, treating people with the dignity that they have. If people are in the United States illegally, there are ways to treat that. There are courts. There's a system of justice.
He pointed to immigrants in the U.S. who've lived what he called good lives in the country for decades. Leo said that while there are many problems in the U.S. immigration system, the protection of human dignity and national security are compatible. Jason DeRose, NPR News.
Target issued a cautious forecast on holiday spending today. NPR's Scott Horsley reports it's one of several clues investors are watching as they try to assess the strength of the U.S. economy.
Discount retailer Target says customers are keeping a tight grip on their pocketbooks, with most of their spending devoted to food and other essentials. Spending on discretionary items like home furnishings is down. Target reported a drop in same-store sales for the most recent quarter and lowered its profit forecast for the full year. A federal judge ruled Facebook's parent company does not have a monopoly in the social networking space. The decision means Meta will not have to spin off its Instagram or WhatsApp features. And new figures from the Commerce Department show the nation's trade deficit shrank in August as higher tariffs took effect. That report, along with many others, was delayed by the government shutdown. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Wall Street's trading in mixed territory at this hour. The Dow is down 43 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Texas leaders are reviewing their next move after appealing a federal ruling that prevents newly passed congressional maps from being used in next year's midterm elections. The ultimate decision will now be made by the U.S. Supreme Court. Mark Jones is a political science professor at Rice University. He says any request for a stayed ruling would go to Justice Samuel Alito, who oversees our region.
Alito could say, no, this is a decision I'm not going to make myself. I'm going to take it to the whole Supreme Court. If they grant the stay at the Supreme Court level, then we are likely to see us use the maps that were passed this summer. On the other hand, if they say no and they don't grant the stay, then we're more likely than not going to be using the districts that are currently in place, that were drawn in 2021.
Jones was a guest on Houston Matters. He described the current congressional map situation in Texas as, quote, chaos. A federal judge issued a preliminary injunction Tuesday prohibiting several Texas school districts, including Conroe ISD in Montgomery County, from displaying posters of the Ten Commandments in classrooms. Senate Bill 10, the law passed this summer, requires all public schools to hang a copy of the poster in classrooms. News 88.7's Bianca Seward has more.
In his ruling, the judge says it was impractical, if not impossible, to prevent people from being subjected to unwelcome religious displays under the law. Conroe ISD had initially paused their rollout of the posters in August, after a separate preliminary injunction prohibited neighboring school districts, including Houston ISD, from displaying the signs. But Conroe changed course after the Attorney General directed school districts to comply, if not directly affected by the ruling. The lawsuit, including Conroe, was filed in late September. In a statement, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, which represents the plaintiffs, called the law plainly unconstitutional. I'm Bianca Seward, News 88.7.
Houston City Council is expected to vote today on a measure that would ban the use of electric scooters during the overnight hours across the city. The policy would implement a curfew from 8 p.m. until 4 a.m. The city says nearly 80% of emergency medical calls relating to e-scooters occur between that time period. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
We're back.
Happy Wednesday.
Hump Day. What is today's date?
Today is November 19th. And like I said yesterday, we're just flying through this month. But thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. We have a full show.
We do. Yesterday, we got a bit carried away talking about Thanksgiving. And then I found out from one of our producers, Garrett Bohlmann, who you're going to hear his very first piece on our show later in the show today, he and his wife put up their tree the day after Halloween.
Oh,
interesting.
He broke the Ernie rule?
He far broke the Ernie rule of not till after Thanksgiving. He did say, though, it's his wife, not him. He's on Team Ernie on this one, but, I guess he's got to go with Team Wife.
On the other hand, when do you take yours down?
Well, that's what we also talked about. I grew up in a family who keeps our tree around a while.
What does
One
that mean?
year, our neighbors joked that we would start hanging Easter eggs on it.
Oh,
wow.
So long. I try to take it down the week after New Year's, but sometimes it's so pretty.
So I am usually a January 1. It's down by January 2nd, which is Dan's birthday. I am it is the new year. It's going. Last year, I took it down the December maybe 27th, pretty soon after Christmas.
Yep.
We packed everything back in the boxes, and I when New Year's came around, I missed it.
That single tear rolled down your cheek.
Yeah, when New Year's came around, I missed it a little bit.
All right, Frank.
What about you, Frank?
No, my mother was the 26th every year.
Okay.
The day Christmas is over, boom.
Uh-huh.
She was that kind of mom.
I understand
right.
that when most of us were bringing in live trees.
Yep.
Because they would dry and all that. So, we had
point.
neighbors who on the afternoon of December 25th, it was out at the curb.
Yes.
So,
Well, I am a live tree kind of family. We get a live tree. The kids pick it out. It's a whole thing. I love it. I love the scent of it. Obviously there's lots of sweeping and we shake it out.
I think that's perfect for a family. I think families should have live trees.
Yeah.
The
If you can,
smell,
it's fun.
the family picking it out, decorating together.
Decorating.
I get it.
We pick it out at Whole Foods, but yes,
yeah. You have somebody put it on your car for you. We probably have somebody meet you at the house, put it up in the living room.
with the stand and everything.
We lived in Norman Rockwell painting. We went up into the mountains and there was a tree farm and we would go out and pick the farm we wanted, and the guy with the axe and the flannel would come out and chop our tree down, tie it on the roof of our car, and we'd drive back down the mountain through the snow.
Explains his flannel, doesn't it?
Yes, very much.
The flannel he wears in July.
Well, you know what?
True, he does.
For those of you watching on TV, these are extremely thin flannels. They look like flannels, but they're more like just a cotton shirt. It's cold in here. Anyway.
Oh, fun. I'm seeing a lot of our YouTube community chiming in, and we got one. Elza Creative says, we follow the Portuguese tradition of leaving the Christmas tree up until January 6th.
Well, there's also
Orthodox and
12th night.
Right.
Because it took the wise men until the 12th night or something to get there. And so
one version of the story.
12 days after Christmas.
Okay, and I know we're going to move along quickly
Because
here.
it's not even Christmas.
But what about Christmas carols? I think we should chat about that as we get closer to Christmas time, but we can move on.
All right. We will move on
wait.
from that. What?
We have a call.
Uh-oh.
We're not moving on
We're
yet.
not moving on quite yet.
Lynn from Cyprus is joining us on the Christmas tree. Lynn, welcome to Hello Houston. What are your thoughts on Christmas trees?
Thank you. Well, I used to be just like Ernie. I never put my tree up till after Thanksgiving. I was like really set on that.
Mm-hmm.
No, one holiday at a time.
I have a feeling there's going to be a butt coming. Yeah. Here we
Yeah.
go.
But, well, my husband died last year, so I live by myself now.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And one of my very favorite self-care things has always been, have a little fire in the fireplace, cup of tea, a good book to read, watch the Christmas tree lights twinkling. It makes me just feel good to have that little scenario. And so I decided this year, why should I just limit myself to that for 4 weeks a year? Why not have that special self-care thing I like whenever I like it? So I put up my Christmas tree already.
Good for you,
love
Lynn.
that.
I support you.
And you can turn it into a Mardi Gras tree as soon as February hits. Just keep it up.
Or a Valentine's tree,
Yeah,
and then you can do St. Patrick's Day
It
for
can go on and on and
March.
on.
Oh, Lynn, thanks for sharing that with us, Lynn.
And Lynn, I've already put out the edict to everyone in my immediate world saying this year, everything is going to be perfect. There's going to be no fighting, no arguing. We're all going to get along, and it's all going to be done with love. And I say that every year. I'm still waiting for the year that we get the peaceful Christmas that truly does look like a Christmas card. Lynn, I wish the best for you for the holidays, and I hope you're enjoying that tree right now.
And we can move along, but Toxic Talk Good Music says, I'm already listening to Christmas music. Me too.
Too soon. But my British computer guy says
too.
he waits until the week before Christmas. Too late. So I'm like the Goldilocks here. You're too early, you're too late. Right in the middle, right after
Alex
Thanksgiving.
says, I'm looking forward to Dickens on the Strand.
Oh, yeah.
That's always fun.
So, Frank, we think about outdoor activities this time of the year and those winter carnivals. How's the weather for this weekend?
It might rain tomorrow, so watch out. The models have been flip-flopping a little bit, so tomorrow may not be as wet. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see because the American model is like, it doesn't look that impressive as far as rain. The European model is a little more aggressive, so we'll just keep an eye on it.
I always go by the European model. So well connected.
Right?
We have a lot coming up on today's show. We are going to be, James Talarico will be joining us a little bit later in the show to talk about the redistricting maps and other things that are on his mind and our minds and your mind. Also, Jelani Cobb is here. He has a new book out called 3 or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here 2012 to 2025. And he's also going to be sharing with us his views on the media and how we cover news and what is happening in our world today. All that's coming up, but we always start by what truly is happening in our world right now. Celeste?
Yes, we have an update on Texas Senate Bill 10, which became law this year, requiring all public schools in Texas to display the 10 Commandments in each classroom. U.S. District Judge Orlando Garcia temporarily blocked 14 districts from enforcing the controversial bill, which again requires public schools to display the biblical text in classrooms. Garcia wrote that it would be impractical, if not impossible, to protect students from unwelcome religious displays without halting enforcement of the law. The district must remove the displays by December 1st, and the order will remain in effect while the case continues. This applies only to the districts named in the lawsuit, but the groups behind the case are urging all Texas school districts to avoid displaying the 10 Commandments. As Ernie mentioned at the top of the second hour of Hello Houston, Texas State Representative and Senate candidate James Talarico will join us live to discuss this and other issues. But for now, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text. Are you in favor or against this ruling? 713-440-8870.
You know how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm totally for it. You know what's interesting is Brandon Creighton, the senator from the Conroe area.
Yeah.
He was the primary author of the bill. So it's no surprise that Conroe ISD was one of the first to put the Ten Commandments up. As soon as it passed, he probably put it up for them. But it's interesting to note that they are now named as you got to take it down.
Yes, Conroe ISD. Of the list, I looked up the areas that we have: Conroe ISD, Cypress Fairbanks ISD, Fort Bend ISD, and Houston ISD.
And is Galveston still being sued by Paxton?
Mm-hmm.
How much did that cost everybody to go nowhere?
Well, I think that, in the interim until it is finalized, it makes sense not to confuse folks by it going up, coming down. I mean, I think actually putting them up and then taking them back down sends an interesting message to the students too, as to, are we supposed to? Wait, aren't these supposed to be the golden rules? Why are they coming down? And then going back up again potentially after the next hearing. So I think maybe everyone should just slow their roll until it's definitively decided, because there's going to be a lot going on with this. Your thoughts, Celeste?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just really, truly a unnecessary headache on school districts and superintendents. And at the end of the day, this is not putting education top of the list, and which is why we send our children to school. This is a total distraction to what our educators should be looking at and doing. This is ridiculous. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And regardless of if it's being funded by a certain group or not funded by a certain group, it's common sense. Do not put 10 Commandments in public schools, period.
It's the wrong thing. There are good things to put up. You could put the golden rule was perfect.
Yes, values can be taught without the religious aspect of it. I am religious. I go to church. That is important in my family. I don't need it to be taught at my child's public school. I can send her to private school if I'd like.
Since you go to church, you go every Sunday?
Almost every Sunday, yes.
Now, have you happened to notice the Ten Commandments somewhere in the hallway or in the Sunday school room or in the church itself?
No.
No. Not even the church feels, and maybe someone will call me, but not even the church feels like we have to shove the Ten Commandments down everybody's throat, because they don't work anymore in today's world.
Yes.
They barely worked in the old world. And
this just goes against what I think many people that are religious and are Christians feel is the direction that we need to be moving in. This is not the way we want.
More. Jesus was the first golden rule guy,
and Jesus was loving and respectful and thought inclusivity was important.
Treat your neighbor as yourself.
Treat your neighbor and respect.
Yeah. As always, when we have this conversation, keep in mind, we are not talking about religious beliefs and ideologies, and that those are yours to understand and accept in your own lives, in your own religion, with your own family. The question becomes, in a public space in which all children of all backgrounds are brought, should that be forced to be hung in the classroom is really the at question.
And I love that my daughter goes to a school that is one of the most diverse schools and is a wonderful representation of what Houston is. Mm-hmm. Diverse in thought, diverse in religion, diverse in culture. And that is important. And so to me, it is one of the things that makes public schools great.
Well, you're going to have to keep us up to speed on the private schools, because I'm convinced that when you give $10,000 to a school voucher program for someone to go to a private school, the state now has a hand in it. And at some point when that private school is counting on about $1 million from the state because of all these students bringing in these vouchers, that's when the state says, oh, by the way, we need the Ten Commandments on the wall or we're going to take all your vouchers away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm being heavy-handed there, but I still just don't understand why we're giving $10,000 to parents of private school children who can already afford. They can already afford that, or the kids wouldn't be there.
Yes.
I mean, if it was a scholarship program, proved need.
And most private schools do have scholarship programs.
Right. But this apparently doesn't. You don't have to prove need. You just apply and you get it.
Yes, that's right.
And we're curious what you think about this.
There's always a trick.
There's a lot going on here. 713-440-8870. Let us know your opinions, your thoughts on this. We like to hear people who agree with the panel. We also like to hear people who disagree with the panel. So share your thoughts with us. All are welcome here. Okay, on to my story. The House and Senate passed a bill demanding the Department of Justice release what? The Epstein files in a 427 6-1 vote. The House of Representatives passed legislation to force the Justice Department to release all files pertaining to the investigation into the deceased child sex trafficker and offender, Jeffrey Epstein. House Speaker Mike Johnson and most GOP members had sought to delay the vote, but relented after President Trump, a former friend of Epstein's, dropped his opposition to it. Hours later, the Senate unanimously passed the bill as is, despite Johnson's hopes that it would be amended. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky. Republican Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana was the lone no vote in the House, and as it turns out, in the Senate too, as it was. He is the only one in all of those houses, saying it doesn't do enough to protect the names of people who might be innocent. In a post on social media platform X, Higgins explains his decisions stand apart from the 427 House colleagues. What he wrote was, "What was wrong with the bill 3 months ago is still wrong today. It abandons 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America," Higgins said. As written, the bill reveals and injures thousands of innocent people, witnesses, people who provided alibis, family members, etc. If enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigation files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. Not by my vote. The bill now is on its way to Trump's desk to be signed. So what are your thoughts on Clay Higgins' stance in voting no?
A lot of innocent girls were already hurt.
Yes. 713-440-8870.
Right? I mean, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
It's not about protecting innocent people in Epstein's orbit. And if they're innocent, they're innocent. And I don't think anyone's going to go after anybody that's innocent.
Exactly.
This will answer a lot of questions. There is still, I was reading the Washington Post today, there's still some doubt that we'll ever really get anything from the Justice Department. There are a lot of loopholes where they could say, you know what, we can't release this, or we have to redact that, or blah, 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 blah. So, as Ernie likes to say, we'll see.
Well, also, what I will say about Clay Higgins' argument is that others have argued that there are these safeguards in the actual bill itself, that there are redactions and there are protections. This has been a talking point that even Speaker Johnson brought up as late as yesterday before the bill got passed, saying the same thing, that it can harm people. But I do believe that with the redactions that is already written into the bill, they took this into consideration. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But that is the stance. I guess if you have a stance 3 months ago, I give him credit for this. He didn't like the bill back when it was kind of in vogue with Republicans not to like the bill. Nothing changed in the bill, just the atmosphere around it did, and he's sticking to his guns.
You know, I looked at his background. He's not a lawyer, but he made his career in law enforcement. You know, maybe he's seen a lot of innocent people in his career be hurt and implicated, and people pointing fingers at others that weren't true. So maybe that's his background, is that he's seen a lot of this happen, and he has some fear that this might happen to other people. He doesn't want to see that happen. And maybe he also thought, you know what?
There are redactions.
It's going to pass whether I vote for it or not.
So. There are redactions that are still in there.
Yes.
And I have a funny feeling it was kind of surprising to him that he turned out to be the sole elected official on the Hill.
When did he vote? Was he the last to vote or the first to vote?
You got to crack some eggs to make an omelet.
We would love to hear what you think. 713-440-8870.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with author Jelani Cobb about his book, 3 or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here from 2012 to 2025. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
It's on at 8 o'clock.
I'm Frank Billingsley, host of Hello Houston. If your forecast this holiday season calls for fun, friendship, and a little cheer, I have the perfect event for you. When you give $60 to Houston Public Media, you can select a ticket to our News and Brews event at St. Arnold Brewing Company this February. It's your chance to meet me in the News 88.7 newsroom in person and enjoy an evening of connection and community. As a thank you, you'll receive a Houston Public Media pint glass at the event to toast the new year. Celebrate the holidays and grab your ticket now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Masked federal agents, unmarked vans, thousands of detainees disappearing from immigration and customs enforcement databases. Secrecy surrounds the Trump administration's mass deportation agenda. What do we know about conditions people experience in the system and the guardrails that exist to protect them? That's next time on 1A.
Listen to 1A coming up this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
My name is Michael Lawson, Houston Market President of St. Luke's Health, a member of Common Spirit Health. Access to quality information is vital for healthy communities to thrive. That's why St. Luke's Health is a proud supporter of Houston Public Media.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Over the past decade, America has been shaken by movements for racial justice, gender equality, gun reform, and policing, and by backlashes that followed. Few people have chronicled this turbulent era with more insight than Jelani Cobb, acclaimed historian, Pulitzer finalist, staff writer at The New Yorker, and dean of Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. How he found time to join us, I just don't know.
Amazing.
From the front lines of Ferguson and Charleston to his wide-angle historical analysis, Jelani has helped us understand not just what happened, but why it happened. His new book, Three or More, is a riot, notes on how we got here. He brings together more than a decade of his reporting and reflections to map the arc of this moment in American life. Jelani Cobb, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If folks want to join the conversation, it's easy. Call or text 713-440-8870.
Let's start out with your opinion of Christmas trees.
Let's hit the important
When
stuff.
do they go up and down?
Yeah, so I mean, this is obvious. I don't understand this.
I'm glad we have an expert.
A Christmas tree is supposed to go up the day after Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Because, and here's why, right? Because Thanksgiving is a particularly important holiday.
Yes.
I mean, it has like terrible historical baggage, terrible baggage. And I understand like why a lot of indigenous people have issues with it. Yes. Here's my case for Thanksgiving.
We're all ears.
It is the least consumerist holiday that we have on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
No one sells you anything except food. And the only expectation for this holiday is that you show up with people that you love and eat together.
There you go.
How?
I love it.
Okay.
Right.
What does that have to do with putting the tree up front Friday?
Because we
Don't
have
steal it.
I have a theory that somewhere there's a trade group that tracks this and has like lamented the plummeting sales of Thanksgiving ornaments.
So Black Friday came along.
They used to actually be ornaments and decorations for Thanksgiving. Like, when's the last time you saw anyone put up like the little bounty and the things that people used to? You don't see those anymore because Thanksgiving has become roadkill. It's become a speed bump on the way to Christmas.
Yes.
On a way to spend money that you probably don't have.
Very good point, and I'm with you on that. I'm just putting up my tree a little early this year because I got to get up because I'm having people over on Friday. So
I mean, I'm saying
Kevin and I decorated we're in a high rise. We decorated our lobby table with pumpkins and turkeys.
Well, good.
That's great.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You celebrated Thanksgiving.
And we didn't tell anybody we did it. It's
That's like a holdover from a different era.
Yeah, we're the mystery decorators. we're the gay guys on the floor.
Okay, let me take you then into something that this kind of touches on.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we are influenced by the mass media today.
Sure.
And how it tells us what to do and how to think and where we go.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the onset of social media that has so shifted that into hyperdrive, do we think for ourselves anymore?
I mean, I think that we have always had a kind of contest for public opinion. And when you go back and you look at, people who were particularly thoughtful, in the early part of the 20th century as mass media was just beginning to dawn, there was a question about whether or not, and some people thought, the job of the media is to help mold public opinion around issues that may be too complicated for the public to understand. That was one viewpoint that people had about this. And other people thought, well, we have to just give people as much information as possible and let them come to their own conclusions. And we have to trust people's intuition and their intelligence and so on. What we have now is we've gotten rid of the gatekeepers.
I was just writing that down as my note to ask you about. Yeah.
So we've gotten rid of the gatekeepers, and the idea of gatekeepers had a particular taint to it. I understand why people didn't want. I'm old enough to remember when we only had 3 television networks, and they had a stranglehold on what the parameters of discussion would be, and we've moved beyond that. The problem is that we've gotten rid of the things about gatekeepers that we did not like. We've overlooked many of the things that we did like, which, for instance, the development of the arc of ethics in media and journalism, the things that people did learn over the course of the 20th century to say we shouldn't report stories like this. We should. Things that we take as basic now, to not report the names of sexual assault victims. That actually was contentious at one point. That actually had to be learned, by media over the course of time. At one point in media, news reporting, especially crime reporting, they would put in parentheses the race or ethnicity of the suspect, which did nothing but kind of fan public, flames of tension and anger and so on. We did learn some things, and some of that has gone out the window, where we have now just 10,000 candles. Anyone can buy a smartphone, and an hour later they are a media person, and operating in a media capacity. And we have to try to find our way somewhat back to a middle ground.
And it's interesting that you're talking about this, looking at it from a technology standpoint and how technology has evolved with media and the way we report things within news outlets. I was reading a New York Times article about your book, the one that you're here to talk to us about, and they described it as a timeline of the unravelment of American democracy. And that is a question that we don't necessarily ask exactly like that, but so many times I've heard from people on all different levels and different political spectrums say, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think it started with the whole Christmas tree before Thanksgiving. Part of it. That's what did
Jelani,
it.
How did we get here? Looking at 2012 and what happened in 2012 to now in 2025.
Sure. So more seriously, what we are seeing really follows particular patterns, that are indelible and easily kind of seen. Last year, 2024, was the centennial anniversary of the 1924 Immigration Reform Act. If you went back to the congressional debates and the opinion editorials and so on in favor of the 1924 Immigration Restriction Act, you would be hard-pressed to distinguish that from what we are hearing right now. We have had periods of time where the enormously contentious ICE policies, where people are being snatched off the street and so on, our equivalent of that was around, the World War II era, the immediate aftermath of World War II, the Palmer raids, in which people were suspected. This was largely targeting the Jewish community at that time, very many of whom were recent immigrants. But that community bore the brunt of a kind of anti-immigrant hostility and suspicion that culminated in the Attorney General of the United States, A. Mitchell Palmer, authorizing federal agents to snatch anyone who they thought was suspect and deport them. And so we have seen these kinds of themes in our past previously.
Right.
We haven't really grappled with why. And part of it is about demography. We've always had a very complicated relationship with demography in this country, partly because we start with the idea of we the people, and we don't really define who we is referring to.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I also think that to that point, I've also heard people say, we're asking, how did we get here? Or why did we get here? And I've heard from people of color say, no, we've always been this, but now we're just recognizing it in different ways because it continues to happen.
Let me ask you this. I have a question. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
It seems like for a long time, we were sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But since Trayvon Martin, 2014, that I read in your book, we've been more 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah. So that's very true. Like the first thing that I ever wrote for The New Yorker, so 99% of these pieces were drawn from The New Yorker. There are, I think, 2 pieces that I did that were not in The New Yorker that are in this collection. And the first thing that I ever wrote for The New Yorker was about Trayvon Martin, which wasn't anywhere near as well known as it is now. It was kind of a news blip out of Florida. And my editor was like, why don't you look into this, see if there's anything there, and so on. And of course, that became a really central moment, in this trajectory that we're talking about. For one reason, when the first time that the phrase Black Lives Matter was used in any significant way on social media was in the aftermath of the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the trial for Trayvon Martin's death. And then 3 years later, as some people will recall, in Charleston, South Carolina, 9 African Americans were killed in the sanctuary of the Emmanuel AME Church by a white supremacist by the name of Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof said in the police interrogation following his arrest that he had been moved to act in such a manner by the Trayvon Martin case, in which case he thought that George Zimmerman had been victimized and by being arrested for shooting an unarmed 17-year-old. And in that moment, both of those things happened. Black Lives Matter was born. And, to an extent that we have yet to really grapple with, Roof is at the center of this resurgence of kind of white nationalism that we've seen, which is now a part of national mainstream politics, which it never had been prior to, really the civil rights era, more than a half century ago. So that's where we kind of find that's where I start the book. Yeah. And then I kind of trace how that all weaves together into where we are now.
Reactions to the stories you're talking about, and it ties into the title of your book, is the fact that people started to amass and make sure their voices were heard. And with social media and the attention, those voices were getting amplified to a level we hadn't seen, I think, like that before. All of this was growing, and there was concern here. The way you look at it, this had been going on. It is important for us to have our voices heard. We're louder now, but are we getting the message out clearer now?
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating question. I think there are 2 parts to it. Like one is that people have the capacity to be louder, but you would have a hard time selling ice in the winter. Well, at least where I'm from, you would. And the point is, why is there an audience that was receptive? And though there are 2 parts to that, and so the receptivity part of it goes back to the thing about demography. And there's this incredible anxiety about who has power in this country, and there always has been. And, when I would talk with my students, for instance, I would talk about the disenfranchisement laws in Mississippi and Louisiana and South Carolina. And, I would, was teaching African-American history, and I was like, well, why was it so important to disenfranchise these people? Why did they expend so much energy to make sure that these people didn't vote? And students would say, oh, they were really racist. And okay, fine. But that doesn't explain it, because there are a lot of places that were racist that didn't go to these same sort of extremes. And they tend to overlook the most obvious example, the most obvious explanation. And it is that simply there were a lot of them. There were a lot of African Americans. Mississippi's population at various points was majority Black. Louisiana, 40-something% Black. Now it's in the 30s, in the percent-wise. But South Carolina, majority Black at some points. You couldn't allow them to vote because they would have power. And that has been the same thing around. There's a long history of there being a dual concern about black voting participation and the number of immigrants that are allowed into the country.
For the same reasons. There's no question Biden would not have won 2020 without the black vote.
And
the black endorsement. I mean, it just wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely not.
So there is some power distribution. But did you think that the pendulum swung too far to the DEI side, that people apparently were really upset about it and Trump got elected?
But also people could also say that Trump wasn't elected without the Latino vote.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that there were a whole array of things that happened, one of which, was that, he received votes that are roughly in line with what you might anticipate, and that other people on the Democratic side just did not vote. I think that some, disaggregation of the young voters who were really upset at the Biden administration over Gaza has to be part of that calculation. The other part of it, which I don't think anyone has grappled with to the extent that it needs to be, if you want to really understand this, is the number of people who felt that if Biden was going to step down, you couldn't just hand it to Kamala Harris like a torch.
Who did not maintain the black male vote.
She did not. But again, the question becomes, is this because these are black men or is it because they are men? There are lots of men who found the kind of masculinist rhetoric. What I would probably say is the question is not why didn't Kamala Harris maintain the same numbers among black men? It was why were black men far less likely to find appeal to the kind of masculinist framings that other men of other backgrounds found really compelling in Trump's 2024 message. Right. I think that's a really interesting question in its own right.
Going back to what you were talking about a little bit ago, and not to put a finger on or to claim someone as the oppressor, but in this model, the oppressor, do they benefit from the variety of voices being loud and forceful out there because there are so many mixed messages out there that in some way it dilutes the opposition to the oppressor?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if we're talking about oppressor, if we want to use that term, then I think that we have lobbies, we have forces, we have groups that have imposed policies that don't benefit large numbers of Americans for different reasons. When we talk about income stagnation, when we talk about the astounding unaffordability of housing, when we talk about the basic things that people need in order to be able to have a decent, what we say is good life outcomes, is what people in policy, circles would say about them. If we think about those people, they have been able to kind of move the cacophony of voices into a pretty well-orchestrated choir. You're hearing lots of things. There are networks of influencers. There are people who are in traditional legacy media. There are people who are kind of all singing on the same key or singing from the same hymnal. I think that a lot of voices is good. I think that's democratic. That's what we're supposed to have. But I also think that where I find, I think, common ground with you is that I think that a lot of the kind of digital manipulation and a lot of the kind of bots, the kind of you're arguing with things that don't actually exist. These are not necessarily representations of human beings or perspectives and so on. And it becomes very easy to sow confusion in that kind of context.
Don't you think the fear of loss of power is what's really driving politics today?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's always 100%. Been driving politics.
I mean, that led to apartheid in South Africa. Yeah. And sure enough, it did switch.
Yeah.
And I think white people here in America today are very afraid of Latino and black voters taking away all their power.
Right, because we have been lulled into, first off, we should just say, disproportionately, when we talk about representation in politics, white people are overrepresented for their proportion of the population.
True.
So they're 61% of the population now. And the last time I checked, we're in the low 90s in terms of representation politically. Or maybe if that fell even into the 80s, they would still be far more especially white men, far more likely to be representatives of in political office, CEOs, all the kinds of heads of institutional kind of things. Those things.
Editorial guys.
Right. So there's no. That's not a real thing. But there is a kind of paranoia that these people's numbers are changing and like, what will that mean for us and so on, because we've been led to accept this idea that this is all zero sum. Mm-hmm. That if any one community benefits, then some other community, it must be to their detriment. And that's not necessarily true.
Jelani, based on your reporting and your book, as you looked through these stories and the evolution of yourself as a journalism, as you look at racism and poverty, do you think that is something that as a country we will ever be able to really understand and grasp?
I think so. And I don't think that that's a kind of naive optimism or anything. But I also think that when we look at most of the progress that we have enjoyed, most of the things that have been bequeathed to us by previous generations, there were people who, in their time, reasonably said, oh, that will never happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's never.
Gay marriage.
That was a classic in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a classic example of this. And when the public opinion polling on that changed, it changed. It wasn't in kind of drips and drabs and like, okay, we'll change a little bit, whatever. It just, there was a point where people kind of collectively seemed like, no, what are we talking about? We're tripping. Like, why are we trying to deny people the right to live their lives as they wish, with whomever they wish? And there was a kind of tidal change in that no one saw coming. Mm-hmm. And I think that possibility is important. Even when we kind of go back through history is depressing, but for those moments, where people go against all kinds of odds, this incredible thing happens that we didn't foresee.
Quickly before we let you go, I want to grab a YouTube question that came in that asked me to ask you about the new path to journalism, considering how the legacy media business models are failing.
Yes. So the new path to journalism involves sending an application to Columbia Journalism School to become the dean. I'm required to say that, but I also think that it's important that we provide, even as the dean of a journalism school, I think that it's important that we provide the kind of alternate paths into, because there always had been. Yeah. There had always been a venerable place for people who came in, learned by doing, were mentored and kind of moved through the ranks. That's decreasingly possible because there are so many news organizations that are going out of business. And we have news deserts and all these other kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So we have to have those kinds of avenues. But if this is a person who's talking about right now, I would say join professional organizations, find mentors where you can. And if you can't go to journalism school, then I would say maybe even the ad hoc class here or there until you can kind of find your way into the field.
And I want to thank GT7 for that question. And thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I have a quick yes or no.
Okay.
You're the dean of the Columbia Journalism School. Mm-hmm. Do you require your journalism majors to take an ethics class?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Since the beginning in 1913.
I had to take one.
I haven't been there since then.
I had to take one at Washington and leave, just making sure you're having to take one.
No. That was what the school was founded for, Perfect. Literally. Yeah.
Perfect.
Jelani Cobb, Dean of Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism and author of 3 or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And you're going to have to come back because we have a lot more questions.
Okay. You can zoom in. You don't always have to be.
I'm happy that I just resolved the whole Christmas thing.
Yes. Coming up on
Friday, here we come.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to be joined by one of the actors from The Outsiders. We'll be back after this break. Stay with us.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
The people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston.
These counties have been growing a lot.
I think what has been holding us back is the fact that for 2 legislative sessions, schools didn't really get an increase in funding.
If the storm surge comes up the ship channel, that's a nightmare.
There's an acceptance at cons that you don't get elsewhere. No judgment, and it's beautiful.
I'm Craig Cohen. Join us for the next Houston Matters, weekday mornings at 9 here on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from DePelchin Children's Center, whose annual holiday project aims to fulfill the wish lists of more than 2,000 children in their care. Info on getting involved is at DePelchinHolidayProject.org. Support comes from the Clarion at Brazosport College, presenting jazz clarinetist Anat Cohen with Corticino, November 21st at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Oh, did any of us grow up without The Outsiders? I think I was telling Ernie that was my first big boy book.
That was your gateway drug.
Not only did it show me there's a real world out there. I think I was about 12, but there was excellent writing to be had, and it made me want to read. So it's just a great. And of course, the book is there. The iconic 1983 film,
movie,
and this big award-winning 4 Tony Awards for this musical.
Incredible.
And it is now here in town. In fact, we saw it last night. Ernie and I both went to see.
We did.
The Outsiders. It won Best Musical at last year's Tony Awards. It's running at the Hobby Center through Sunday, November the 23rd. And with us now is the character Dallas, being played by Tyler Jordan Wesley. And let me tell you something. How you boys move, you got to be. Nobody's over 25, are they, in that cast? Because you were all. They've got this jungle gym. They're running all over all these hoops, and it's amazing. The choreography, truly amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, let me ask you this, though. Do you look at it as choreography? Is it staging? Is it movement? How do they define it? And how do you audition for these roles?
Yeah, I think that Jeff and Rick Cooperman, who are the choreographers of the show, they are well versed in stage combat, and also have very technical training in ballet and modern and all the different dance styles. And so I think that that's what makes their style of choreography so exciting, is that it can't really just be described as dance or physical combat. It's sort of this gorgeous merriment of both.
Well, every moment is a visual on stage, and the way you folks move from spot to spot. There's a scene at the drive-in, and how the benches come in and move and shift. It fascinated me. Even if I hadn't heard a sound that was coming out of any of you, I would have wanted to go back and just watch you guys move things around and your bodies.
It was amazing. It was almost Bob Fosse, the way Bob Fosse came on the scene, with Cabaret and had all these different kind of movements that no one had ever seen before. It's sort of what you got going here.
Yeah, it's so cool to be part of. I definitely view this musical as something that is monumental and special to the Broadway canon, and it's so exciting to be part of its legacy.
We were joking and talking about how The Outsiders was our gateway drug to reading and something that we were all familiar with. When did you first become familiar with The Outsiders? Or was it something when you found out you could be cast in it that you really devoured?
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with the story until the musical came out. I graduated from Texas State University this past May.
Congratulations.
And, thank you so much. Part of our curriculum was just sort of staying in touch with musicals that were being brought to Broadway and things that we could, like you said, see ourselves in. And Outsiders was one of those shows for me. And so that's when it really came on the scene. And then once that open call had gone out, I started taking in the movie, and I read the book. And yeah, that was how I came in touch with the story. But it wasn't part of my curriculum growing up to read in school. I don't know how it skipped me like that.
So I assume you've gone and read the novel now.
Several times, yes.
I kind of skipped the plot.
Yeah.
It's the Socs and the Greasers, the have and the have-nots.
Right.
And it's 1967, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they get into a lot of brawling.
Yes. So, Tyler, question for you. You just mentioned that you just graduated, and now you are performing on the big stage. How has that transition been, and what has been maybe not exactly what you thought it would be as a performer? It's
been a huge blessing. Largely, it has been surprises for the better. I think that so I'm originally from South Carolina, and so Texas State University is in San Marcos, Texas. Uh, and so I had gone away from home, and even before then, in South Carolina, my junior year, I went to this place called it was a boarding school called the South Carolina Governor School of Arts and Humanities. So left home again, and then I don't know. I mean, graduating, I think the plan was to go to New York, to be away from family again, but I just thought I had a little bit more time. But this all just sort of happened very, very quickly. I was auditioning for the show while I was still in school and found out about landing the role the night of my senior showcase. And so it was straight out of
heaven,
my summer leaving college and into touring the country. And so going from hotel to hotel has been an adjustment for sure, but it's so exciting, and I couldn't wish for anything better.
One of your castmates, it might have actually been you. I was watching some of the footage of you folks in rehearsal, was talking about the joy of taking this Broadway musical out on the road and realizing every performance, these are people who are seeing it for the first time. It's not a New York crowd that's jaded, that has seen so much Broadway. These folks are coming out of either a pure love of theater or a pure love of the outsiders, and you get to share this story night after night. As a performer, how is that feeling for you to be connected with this classic book?
It's so special. It's such a blessing to be able to be part of something that makes theater so accessible to people who aren't living in New York, and to be able to spark something in the hearts of young people who maybe haven't experienced musicals yet, and to be maybe that first thing that sparks them into being like, you know what, this is something that I want to pursue. And I think going from city to city, just meeting these different young people, older people who are so touched by the story, the people who are reading it in school right now or read the book growing up, or while we were in Tulsa, one of my dressers, their mom had gone to school with Essie Hinton, and every night, he would just talk to me about how special it was for him to be able to be part of this show and this project. It's a feeling like no other to be able to bring it around the country.
I feel sorry for folks who see The Outsiders as their first musical, because I worry they're going to be let down by a lot of things they're going to see afterwards. If they're expecting everyone to be at this caliber, they're going to be sorely disappointed.
I still haven't read as good a book.
Yeah, and we did get a YouTube comment. Trauma therapist Houston says we are going tonight, and we saw it on Broadway last year. Can't wait to see you, Tyler. So you have fans, Tyler.
Yo, can't wait to see them tonight.
He'll be looking for you out there.
That's right. Tyler Jordan Wesley is an actor playing the character Dallas in the North American tour of the Tony Award-winning musical The Outsiders. Tyler, again, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
If you are going to see it tonight, I'm doing the talkback with the cast afterwards right there in the theater. So nice. Stay put and join us for the talkback.
Yeah, break a leg, but don't break anything else.
The Outsiders
jump around.
The Outsiders will run at the Hobby Center through Sunday, November 23rd. Coming up, we're going to continue diving into today's top stories. We'll also revisit our conversation with documentary filmmaker Ken Burns about his latest miniseries that's airing on PBS right now, The American Revolution. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Hi, Hi, I'm Erica Barris from Planet Money.
And I'm Guy Raz from How I Built This.
Between inflation and worker shortages, it's important to understand the economy right now.
That's right, and find out how entrepreneurs make it work for them.
Listen to Planet Money and How I Built This from NPR for an hour of economics
And innovation.
every week.
Planet Money and How I Built This, Saturdays at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
Support comes from Visit Galveston, presenting winter events across the island, including Holiday in the Gardens, Polar Express train ride, and attractions welcoming visitors during the holiday season. More information is available at visitgalveston.com.
We have about a 20% chance of a shower or thunder shower, the high getting up to near 83. It's already 82. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll be joined by Texas State Representative James Talarico. He'll give us his thoughts on yesterday's ruling on redistricting maps and more. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. The documentary miniseries, The American Revolution, is airing on PBS TV 8. And we're going to discuss with filmmaker Ken Burns and producer Sarah Botstein.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll also hear Houston public media producer Garrett Bohlmann's conversation with YouTuber and science communicator Hank Green.
And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston continues right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The Senate has now passed the legislation forcing the release of the files on the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The House passed it nearly unanimously yesterday. It now heads to President Trump's desk, and he has said he will sign it, but it's not clear when that will happen. NPR's Sam Greenglass has more on what happens next.
The materials have to be made public within 30 days of Trump signing the bill. Depending on what comes out, that could fuel new conflicts. Trump, for example, has pledged to focus on Democrats whose names might come up. And depending on what the Justice Department redacts, that could spark even more questions.
NPR's Sam Greenglass. A new NPR PBS News Marist poll is out today. It finds that ahead of next year's midterm elections, Democrats have a big advantage. NPR's Domenico Montanaro has more.
The more than 1,400 respondents were asked if the midterm elections took place today, which party's candidate would they vote for in their district. Democrats came out 14 points ahead. That's a whopping lead. The last time it was that wide was 8 years ago during President Trump's first term. In 2018, when Democrats won 40 seats and control of the House, their edge was between 6 and 12 points. The only question is whether this advantage is coming too soon for the party. A year from now, the political landscape could look very different, but right now, Democrats have the upper hand. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
A federal judge in Alexandria, Virginia, is hearing arguments from former FBI head James Comey's lawyers today to have the indictment on charges of lying to Congress and obstruction thrown out, saying it's revenge from President Trump over Comey's criticism of Trump. Meanwhile, Lindsay Halligan, Trump's U.S. attorney who brought the charges against Comey, told the judge today that the full grand jury didn't see the final indictment, that only the foreperson and one other grand juror did. Comey pleaded not guilty to the charges last month. The Polish government says it will force Russia to close its last operating consulate in Poland in response to a railway sabotage incident it blames on Moscow. The Kremlin denies any involvement. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports Russia's left now with only its embassy in Warsaw.
Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski says he's withdrawing consent for the operation of Russia's consulate in the port city of Gdansk. This comes just days after two sections of a rail line connecting Warsaw to Lublin were damaged by what Poland is calling Russian operatives. The line is a strategic link between Poland's capital and Ukraine. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says two Ukrainian citizens working for Russia are suspected of the act while collaborating with Russian secret services. He said their identities are known but could not be revealed due to ongoing investigations. And he said the pair has already left Poland, crossing the border into Russian ally Belarus. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. A jury is poised to make a decision as soon as today regarding whether the city of Houston and a Houston Police Department officer are liable for a fatal crash that happened in 2021. On December 26th of that year, 75-year-old Charles Payne died after his car was struck by an HPD vehicle. According to federal court documents, Payne was attempting to turn across 2 lanes of traffic from North Shepherd Drive to Thornton Road when the crash occurred. HPD officer Christopher Cabrera was behind the wheel of the police vehicle. He was allegedly traveling at 70 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. Payne's family sued both the city and Cabrera in 2023 and is seeking compensation for damages and attorney's fees. Across Houston, e-scooter rentals are now banned from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. The city council approved the curfew over concerns about reckless riding on sidewalks and streets. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports one council member wanted a delay.
Councilmember Julian Ramirez says details of the proposal were posted only on Friday, providing insufficient time for public engagement. He called for a delay, but Mayor John Whitmire pushed back.
What's the greater good? You do realize the danger you're putting those Houstonians to and the disruption of our holiday season.
Well, I think that's a false choice, frankly. I think transparency is paramount in government.
It's so transparent.
The regulations represent a walkback from a previously proposed full ban in the central urban core, and they have carve-outs for personal devices used for commuting. Ramirez will hold a committee meeting early next month to gather more public comment. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
Governor Greg Abbott has designated the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, as a foreign terrorist organization, along with the Muslim Brotherhood. The designation specifically calls to enjoin CAIR from what it calls, quote, future gang activities. CAIR responded with a statement that it's ready to sue Abbott for violating the First Amendment, quote, if he attempts to turn this publicity stunt into actual policy, end quote. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello there.
That was a fun hour.
Very fun hour.
Jelani Cobb was so interesting to speak with. Yes, fabulous.
And that book is something. I mean, it takes you really the whole history of where we have been, especially with race relations in this country. I know, and I wanted to ask him, I don't know if we'll ever have racial equality. Can we get racial harmony? Can we get that? At least as a start?
Yeah.
You know, I have this kind of belief that right before you see the major changes are when the most upheaval happens. And so the tensions that we're feeling in this moment are because it's about to break and things are about to move forward. And I think the old guard tries to hold on with the last grasps and are always the noisiest. That would be my take on it.
You know what? From your lips to God's ear.
Yeah.
So why not? Complete change. It's warm and cloudy. I woke up this morning, looked out my many windows of my high rise. I thought, it's so beautiful because clouds from a high rise are so much more interesting than just a blue sky. Yeah. And it was really interesting. So watch out for a little rain tomorrow.
Okay, we will watch out.
What about rain today?
You know what? There was a thunderstorm in Brenham just this hour, but I just looked at the radar. I don't see a lot going on.
Okay.
So it's mostly just clouds.
That's what I've been seeing, is that there's going to be scattered storms and things like that.
Especially tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm not a very scattered storm. Those things. The water when it comes out of the sky. That thing, I think, is going to happen.
Well, a big storm that happened in this country 200 plus years ago was the American Revolution. I like this segue. Later on in the show, we're going to be playing portions of our interview with Ken Burns, whose new documentary, The American Revolution, is currently airing right now this week on TVA. And if you happen to have access to the PBS app, or if you're a Passport member, the entire series is there so you can binge it all. Also, in just a little bit, State Representative and Senatorial candidate James Talarico will be joining us for his thoughts on yesterday's ruling on the redistricting maps and more. But first, Celeste with the headlines.
Yes, thank you, Ernie. Texas Governor Greg Abbott designated the Council on American Islamic Relations and the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist and transnational criminal organizations on Tuesday. The declaration prohibits both groups from purchasing or acquiring land in Texas and allows, quote, increased enforcement, unquote, against both groups, the governor said. CAIR's self-described mission is to enhance understanding of Islam, protect civil rights, promote justice, and empower American Muslims. The organization criticized Abbott in a statement Tuesday, saying his publicity stunt masquerading as a proclamation has no basis in fact or law. The Muslim Brotherhood is an international movement that has advocated for the application of religious law in Muslim-majority countries. While there's no evidence the movement has taken hold in the United States, it has nonetheless been the focus of criticism and controversy. Why do you think our governor designated this group as terrorist? Is this fair or not? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Well,
to my point, we need to get racial harmony in control. And I don't understand why Abbott would come out with this, except that he's posturing.
Well, it's interesting to me with the Ismaili Center, the brand new Islamic center that just opened here in Montrose. Yeah. It's a beautiful state-of-the-art building, and as that's happening, on the other hand, we're having this conversation from the governor. It's very concerning, I think.
It's extremely concerning, and over and over and over, we understand that this type of, rhetoric is very dangerous for different groups, and it can cause retaliation in ways that can be very dangerous for people. And hate crimes can start going up, and I think that it's unfortunate. It is absolutely unfortunate.
I'm going to take a slightly different slant on this and talk about the irresponsibility of speech today by our elected officials. And by saying something is a terrorist group or something is a negative organization without fully vetting, fully understanding that words have power. And each time things like this are said and thoughts are propagated that way, the harm it does to an entire community. Now, if in fact it turns out that these organizations, though, doesn't look like
which
it, but
neither
are,
group is designated a terrorist organization by the federal government.
So the harm that does labeling something like that, beyond even those organizations themselves, we have to look at the ripple effect. And it goes back to what we were all taught in school. Words matter.
And, I believe that earlier this year, Senator Ted Cruz and John Cornyn both co-sponsored a bill that would require President Trump to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. The bill hasn't advanced in the Senate.
But Abbott has taken it on himself.
And
who's to tell me who I can sell my land to? So this idea that they can't purchase or acquire land, whoever they specifically is, if it's my land, I should have the right to sell to anybody that is, at least not on a federal level, considered a terrorist. I don't want to sell to a terrorist group. But if they are not considered that on a federal level, I should be able to sell my land. It's my land.
Right.
So who are you to tell me whether I can sell it or not?
Well, and I mean, I understand the thought process behind. I don't necessarily always agree, but I understand that you don't want outside entities buying up all of our property here, because then who controls what is America?
You know what country owns more land in America than any other country?
Which one?
Besides the United States? Canada. Which, if you think about all of the border states, Canada owns more.
Again,
as a foreign interest.
I just think it's
You're
dangerous.
afraid of Canada?
But we've seen the thing also where they were limiting what China could buy in this country and the properties. And so this is an ongoing thing where you're limiting what foreign entities can buy up in our country.
But for the wrong reasons, like you said, like Celeste just said, this has not been designated a terrorist organization.
From the federal government. And I also think that, yes, okay, so if you're looking at it from a real estate, we don't want them buying real estate. Well, that's one thing. But to call them terrorists is, again, words matter, and it can have major impacts on people when people are out, and we see it happening already during
transnational criminal organization.
Yeah, I mean, that's strong. That is strong.
From the governor of one of the largest state in the contiguous United States, as we like to note.
Yep.
713-440-8870. We would love to know what you think about this. What are your feelings about it? And I guess when you label something with terms of terrorist, you should also be able to provide, you should show your work. You should be able to provide the facts that go behind saying that.
Show your work. I like that.
Yeah. Like in school, you can put the math problem down, but you had to show your work how you got there. I think that's probably a new rule we should incorporate when we talk about stuff like this. Show your work.
Mm-hmm. And earlier we were talking about Senate Bill 10, about the 10 Commandments, and we did get quite a few YouTube comments. And Toxic Talk Good Music says they didn't even display the 10 Commandments in my Catholic school.
To my point.
Yep, to Frank's point. Alex Garza Photo says, if we're going to post anything, I would rather see the Beatitudes that Jesus tells about in the Gospel of Matthew.
The good old Sermon on the Mount.
That's right. And then Rudy 78 says religion should be controlled by the parents and not public school teachers. They have enough on their plate without having to explain religion. And lastly, we did get this one last YouTube comment that says it's not being thought these days about the 10 Commandments. That's no-brainer, people.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, and the argument that continues from those who want them posted is that we have a Judeo-Christian country founding, is their argument, on which our laws and rules were based on the 10 Commandments. That's that argument. I don't know that, once again, that they can show their work on that one either.
I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, don't we all know you shouldn't kill people? You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't lie. I mean, we've gotten to that ethical point in our culture that maybe 4,000 years ago, they didn't, I want your lamb, I'm going to steal it.
And I remember we had a caller who called in one time and was very upset about the fact that we were taking, religion out of schools and on. And he said, well, we were taking everything out of public schools, and why do you think we have so many mass shootings? And I remember just that stood out to me because I think we have to say very clearly, we are not saying values and respect and morals and ethics need to be taken out of schools. Those are taught every single day.
So. Well, and talking about other issues, one that we talked a lot about yesterday, it was breaking here while we were on the air, was that the new congressional map, we had talked a lot about that coming in for Texas and shifting 5 seats potentially to Republican position. That a judge struck that down. It has created a lot of confusion for folks that were running for these seats or wanted to run for these seats, and even the potential of it going to the Supreme Court. Joining us right now to discuss this and so many other things is Texas State Representative and senatorial candidate James Talarico. Hello there, sir. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back on.
We were talking about this yesterday, and I went home and I turned on CNN, and there you were talking about this very issue right there. This is very important to you.
Well, my fellow Texas Democrats and I broke quorum over the summer to shine a national spotlight on this redistricting power grab. And we're so proud that so many other states and millions of Americans across the political spectrum joined us in that fight against this redistricting scheme. And I'm very thankful that yesterday a federal court struck down this rigged map. And I think this underscores that voters should be choosing their politicians, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Representative Talarico, how concerned are you that the U.S. Supreme Court could stay the judge's injunction on the state's redistricting plan?
I mean, I think that's a major concern. I would hope that the justices on the Supreme Court would uphold the Voting Rights Act and would prevent this kind of intentional racial gerrymandering that we're seeing with this map under consideration. We've got to fight for free and fair elections for all Texans and all Americans, because that's how we hold our elected officials accountable. We do it at the ballot box. And when politicians draw their own lines and manufacture the outcome that they want, it disrupts that democratic process. So this is not about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about whether or not all Americans have the ability to elect the candidate of their choice.
For some reason, sir, I think we were all a little surprised. Were you surprised with the ruling yesterday?
I was. I've, like all of us, just become a little cynical about our court system, and it's become so partisan and so political. But I was pleasantly surprised that these federal judges upheld the law.
One of whom was a Trump appointee.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Because, again, this is not an issue of party. It's an issue of power. People who are in power want to stay in power, and they use redistricting as a way to do that. And I should just say this is a problem in both political parties, not necessarily equally, but here in Texas, it was Republicans who were redrawing the lines in the middle of the decade. We're only supposed to draw these lines at the beginning of the decade, but they decided to do it in the middle because President Trump asked them to, because he's worried he's going to lose seats in Congress in the next election because of his unpopular policies. But we've also seen this kind of gerrymandering in blue states too. Mm-hmm. So again, this is not a partisan issue. This is about whether or not powerful people can be held accountable at the ballot box.
Representative, if I'm not misreading this, that the judges weren't opposed to the redistricting mid-season or mid-session, however you want to put it, middle of a 10-year period. They opposed to it being done along what they perceived as racial boundaries. Is that correct?
That is correct, because that is a violation of the Voting Rights Act. This is something that we decided in the civil rights movement as a country, that we were not going to allow politicians to use redistricting to discriminate against black and brown voters. And it's been the law in this country since then. We've got to have judges who are going to uphold it.
But was that the concern from your folks' point of view initially, was the racial gerrymandering, or simply the fact that within the 10-year, in the middle of the 10-year period, they just decided to do new maps?
It's both. It's both what they were doing and how they were doing it. The what was they were in the middle of the decade trying to change the rules of the game so they could get 5 more seats for the president. And the way they were doing it was by discriminating against black and brown voters across Texas.
So I would think this would be a good point, talking point for your campaign, because you were out there doing something about this.
Well, I mean, and we took a lot of risks.
Yeah.
My colleagues and I, by breaking quorum over the summer, we faced bomb threats. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's also running for this Senate seat, he threatened to vacate our seats in the legislature because we broke quorum, which is constitutionally protected, to shine a spotlight on this power grab. And I'm really thankful that all of that came to fruition yesterday with this court ruling.
Could the Republicans just resubmit another map that doesn't work along racial lines, if in fact that is what they actually originally did, and then that map could go into effect? Or is there something with the timing and the court cases and the logistics of it that none of this can see the light of day by the 2026 election?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment on the process here and what would need to happen by what date. But, I don't think there's a way for Republicans at the state capitol to rig these maps without discriminating against voters of color. And again, this should be a concern to every Texan, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, because when powerful people, particularly when the most powerful man in the country, can just call up Governor Abbott and demand 5 seats in Congress, that is fundamentally un-American, because the president said he was entitled to these seats, but no politician is entitled to any seats. These seats don't belong to us. They belong to the people. And we have to remember that despite our partisan differences.
You know, Representative Talarico, we also have been following the Senate Bill 10, in addition to the district court's order to Conroe ISD and several other Texas school districts not to display the 10 Commandments. The Fifth Circuit has blocked a similar law in Louisiana. Do you expect this will eventually have to be resolved by the U.S. Supreme Court? And if so, how do you see it playing out?
Well, y'all know that I was a Texas public school teacher before I ever ran for office. And y'all know that I'm also a current seminary student studying to become a minister myself one day. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas. My faith means everything to me. It's why I'm in public service, because Jesus commanded us Christians to love our neighbors. And through public policy, I try to make my neighbor's life a little easier. And so I've been strongly opposed to this bill that forces every public school teacher to display the 10 Commandments, not only because it's unconstitutional, it violates the Establishment Clause, which prevents the government from establishing a state religion, but it's also very unchristian, because we should have concern for our Jewish students, our Muslim students, our Sikh and Buddhist and atheist students. We're called as Christians to have particular concern for the outsiders, for the outcasts, for our neighbors who don't fit in. And by pushing our religion down their throats, we're not loving our neighbors. And so I worry that this piece of legislation is not only a threat to our Constitution, it's also a threat to the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Well, your speech on the floor of the House was really brilliant and often quoted when you pointed out that not very many people in that chamber were living by the 10 Commandments.
That's right. And I think this is the problem. Like, we should all be more focused on living by example rather than living by mandate. Mm-hmm. I would hope that my fellow Christians in public office, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, I would hope that we would spend more time living by the 10 Commandments than forcing other people to live by the 10 Commandments.
You know, we are seeing these two court rulings essentially as something that many people are kind of, like we've talked about earlier, caught off guard. Do you think that we are moving in a different direction when we are looking at simple politics?
Well, I think there's a growing backlash to the extremism and the corruption that we've seen in politics over the last few years. And I think that's a bipartisan backlash. I'm campaigning all over the state for the Senate seat. I'm going to every corner of Texas, big cities and small towns and suburbs, red areas and blue areas alike. And everywhere I go, I hear people concerned about the direction of this country. And I hope that in this upcoming election in 2026, we can cross over all these divisions and come together as Texans and as Americans to finally demand a government of, by, and for the people.
You know, we always hear about opposition research. I'm not sure I really know what that means, but do you have any clue who you will be running against if you make it through the Democratic primary for senator?
I don't. I'm competing for the Democratic nomination, and that will be decided at the beginning of March. And then the Republican candidates will do the same thing. So whether it's Ken Paxton or John Cornyn, I look forward to competing against their nominee in the general election next year.
Do you think either one of them would be an easier opponent to beat?
I think they both have their own weaknesses. They both have their own strengths. And I couldn't be able to tell you which one would be easier to compete against. But, I will prosecute the case against both John Cornyn and Ken Paxton, because both of them have been far more interested in serving their billionaire mega donors than serving the people of this state on a whole host of issues. And I think people are tired of that kind of corrupt leadership.
Speaking of people being tired of a lot, and go with me on this one a little bit to see where I'm going, is that I think this strong partisanship that we've been seeing, I think there's starting to be a little thaw there. And I saw that in all of this going on with the Epstein files and Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out and saying, we've got to bring down the rhetoric, we've got to bring it down. Are you hopeful that this could be a turning point to a healthier political system moving forward, or is it just a momentary ripple?
No, I am hopeful because I'm tired of being pitted against my neighbor. I'm tired of being told to hate my neighbor. As I mentioned, my faith calls me to love my neighbor, not just my neighbor who looks like me or prays like me or votes like me. I'm called to love all of my neighbors. And I hope we can get back to that kind of civic ethos in this country, because the ties that bind us together are what make this American experiment possible. And so we have to have love for one another, even when we disagree. And I'm hopeful that we're going to get back to that point.
Texas State Representative and Senate candidate James Talarico, thank you for joining us today on Hello
thank
Houston.
you so much. It's nice of you to take time out of your day. We appreciate it.
Y'all, thanks for having me.
And Dr. Robinson Armstrong, Republican National Committeeman, will join us tomorrow at 11:25 to give us the Republican point of view on the maps. But coming up, we are going to hear a conversation with Ken Burns when we come back after this break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Michael Schaefer. My partner Ellen and I have been proud supporters of public radio and TV for decades.
We really would be lost without our daily fix of unbiased national and local news, cultural programming, and great entertainment.
But with recent federal defunding, stations like Houston Public Media face real challenges.
Now's the time to step up.
Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Thank you.
Houston Public Media TVA. Ken Burns' series The American Revolution continues. The Americans' surprising victory at Saratoga encourages France to openly support the United States. Tonight at 7 on TV8.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. With 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Ken Burns has explored numerous subjects, people, and moments in history in his critically acclaimed documentaries, The Civil War, Jazz, Baseball, and the Vietnam War, to name but a few. His newest documentary, The American Revolution, premiered this past weekend and will continue through the rest of the week. He co-produced it with Sarah Botstein and David Schmidt. We spoke to Ken Burns and Botstein about the documentary series back in June. Take a listen.
He is perhaps the most famous and critically acclaimed documentary filmmaker of all time. Ken Burns has explored numerous subjects, people, and moments in history in his critically acclaimed documentaries, The Civil War, Jazz, Baseball, the Vietnam War, just to name a few. His newest documentary, The American Revolution, is set to premiere in November. He co-produced it with Sarah Botstein and David Schmidt. To tell us more about the documentary, we welcome Ken and Sarah to the program. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Hello, Houston. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Houston.
You know, I think my first question in all of this, in terms of time, when you're trying to put something together like this, is the Civil War just as far away as the Revolutionary War? Or is there really a difference in that group of years as far as gathering information and the stories?
What a smart question. It's huge difference. I mean, we know the Civil War and we feel it. We feel like we know the people because we have photographs, thousands and thousands of photographs. We don't have newsreels until those veterans start reuniting at 50 and 75 and 100 years. And so that's just stuff you can use in your last episode. The Vietnam, of course, and World War II, subject of another film, are amply covered not only by still photography but by newsreel. There are no newsreels and there are no photographs for the American Revolution. Right. And what that does, first of all, is it makes us sort of feel detached from the actual events. We see it, we sort of romanticize it. We sort of treat it as an object, a relic in amber, and we don't see it for what it was, as a bloody civil war, as costly as our own Civil War, which was not a civil war as much as a sectional war. This was a civil war, lots of civilian deaths all up and down the 13 former colonies. And so when you have people in paintings, and only a handful, just a tiny percentage of people are painted, then the world gets anonymous. You don't have the portrait that the private had. You do have the portrait of the general, but you don't have the private. So our job, Sarah's and my job, and David Schmidt's, has been over the last nearly 10 years to sort of remove the onus of that, to make this a real and very violent struggle. It does not in any way diminish the great ideas that are a product of this. The most consequential revolution in history, we say. I think one of the most important events in all of world history, certainly the most important event since the birth of Christ, is the invention of the United States, where everyone before was a subject and now people have the opportunity to be citizens and all the tremendous responsibility. So we've told a story, and we've used reenactment footage, we've used paintings, we've used maps, and we have many people, writers and scholars who comment, but we have hundreds of first-person voices that give dimension and therefore reality to the famous figures like the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons and the John Adams. But it's also introducing you to a 14-year-old fifer named John Greenwood from Boston who joins the militia, or a 15-year-old from Connecticut who joins the Continental Army, or a 10-year-old gal from Yorktown, Virginia, who's all the way through. Really helps when that 10-year-old gal's remembrances are read by Maya Hawke, or that Tom Hanks is reading some quotes, or Meryl Streep, or Paul Giamatti is reprising his John Adams role, or there's Josh Brolin, or there's Sir Kenneth Branagh. We have French, we have German, we have British, Irish, common soldiers, King George. It is everybody's there, loyalists as well as patriots. And so what happens is, I think the combination of how we've used the reenactments like footage, like newsreel, how we've used the paintings like photographs, how we've treated the landscape. We've always had live cinematography like it's the big star. This is the most beautiful, the prize of North America is what this is all about, and that those voices bring alive the story of the creation of us. And I mean that both as lowercase and uppercase, the U.S., but also us. And the problem is, because it just gets relegated to history or whatever, and it's not boring, it's too boring, and people aren't like, this is one of the best stories. We won't work on a more important film.
Yeah. Sarah, quickly also, it takes, as I understand, 10 years to pull this together. Yet it seems so in the moment right now.
Right.
Calculating where we will be by the time a project starts to when it'll finish. How do you guys, you're always right on it.
We love to talk about this because, we start a film in one moment, it comes out in another moment, and the whole way we are making the film, two things are happening. One, we're not listening to anything that's happening around us, and we're hearing the parallels and the ways in which the history is resonating or echoing or talking to the past changes every month, every year that we make the film. And so we often work through 2 or 3 presidential administrations, certainly lots of local elections in our communities. Our lives change and our emotional connections to the story change, as well as the historical relevance or resonances. So, I love that about our work, but really, I say this all the time, and we talk about it all the time. We really put our heads down and we try to get the story right and the history right, and then we just let it go out into the world, and people will find the echoes and resonances as they change and evolve. And what we want is a film that will stand the test of time and a story that's accurate and dynamic and hopefully not boring.
Yeah, and you can reverse engineer that. What if you didn't do that? What if you're pointing neon signs? Oh, isn't this so much like today? You've just dated your film. You've made it irrelevant, right? So if we are disciplined while we're making it, and we understand, look, there's a failed invasion of Canada in here. There's debates about inoculation. There's an eclipse. There's lots of stuff, hundreds of things that you will go. But if you have a discipline about it, the way, say, an athlete has to be just focused on telling the story and figuring out how to do your job, then you're going to do something, and when it's out, it has that ability to be durable and lasting. And let's remember, today is a school day in most of America, and our films some of them 35 years old, the Civil War series is 35 years old, are being shown hundreds of times today. Hundreds of times. So a portion of it in classrooms all across the United States. And that's true of Lewis and Clark, it's true of jazz, it's true of the World War II and Vietnam, it's true of country music, it's true of the Roosevelts, the Dust Bowl. They're in rotation, and that is joyous. It wouldn't happen if we're sort of saying, isn't this so like today? Well, we started this and Barack Obama still had 13 months in his presidency, and then we went through the first term of President Trump and the full term of Joe Biden, and now we're into the second term of... It doesn't matter to us. History will always rhyme. It will always resonate because human nature is involved. And the problem, and your interesting and really spot-on first question, is about that. We somehow think, because all we see are just the stockings and the breeches and they can't be like us. They are exactly like us. All of the degrees of generosity and greed, of virtue and venality are there among people and sometimes within people. So you can take somebody who's now become so cliched that you can't relate to him or her, and you make them human with flaws, and suddenly they're realer, more dimensional, and you're more curious about them, and you go, they did that? And suddenly the superficiality of the American Revolution, Lexington conquered, then maybe it's Bunker's Hill, which takes place on Breed Hill, Trenton crosses the Delaware, and then surrender at Yorktown. Boom, done, right? And the time between, the surrender at Yorktown happens about 2/3 of the way through our sixth episode of 12 hours.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So the American Revolution is obviously this 6-part documentary series. And as you're exploring the country's founding struggles and the 8-year War of Independence, how do you decide what needs to go in 6 parts? Right?
So I'll let Sarah answer this too, just to say that you would presume that making a film is a building process.
Right.
It's a subtracting process. We collect 40 to 50 times the amount of material that we'll have for these final 12 hours. More than 500 hours of material, from paintings to maps to interviews with people to some of the reenactments. And then it's figuring out what you can keep. Remember the movie Amadeus? What's too many notes? How can we include a bottom-up as well as a top-down story? How can we give dimension to people who are so familiar that they become unknown to us, like a George Washington, who's without a doubt the most important person in the whole story, though very, very complicated human being. And so it's, and then you meet Betsy Ambler in Yorktown, and you meet John Greenwood, and you meet Joseph Plummer, and you meet loyalists, and we're umpires calling balls and strikes.
Wow.
But the thing is, it's not a process of adding. It's really a process of subtraction. We collect all this stuff. We work for years gathering the material.
So then how do you know what you cut out at that point?
Well, I was going to answer the question a little differently than Ken, actually, which maybe goes to that. People ask us this question a lot, and I think they're often surprised that our process stays the same regardless of the subject matter. So if you're making a film about jazz music or the Vietnam War, Ernest Hemingway, or Ken worked on a big series on country music, the way we approach the work is always the same. And yes, it's subtractive, but we also are in the business of listening. So we want to add what we're missing, and we work chronologically. Our process is the same. We take our time and we listen very carefully, not only to the scholars and advisors and historians and archivists and visual material, but we're subtracting from everything we collect, which is, a ratio of 10 or 40 to 1. But then we're also adding the things that we're missing because we want to tell the story, I think, of the human experience through a subject. So for me, a war film is more interesting the more political and family dynamics that happen. He loves when the right flank and the left flank and the specifics of a battle. And so I'm going to lean into how Ken sees the importance of a military struggle. And then we're all going to cry when somebody dies, or you learn that, that general's wife is pregnant and her family chose this. It's a great family drama and a great political drama.
You just heard our conversation with Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein about the new documentary, The American Revolution, recorded earlier this summer. You can watch The American Revolution on PBS Channel 8. And also coming up, our producer, Garrett Bohlmann, talks to Hank Green. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
This week on This American Life, there's a spot in Mackenzie and Isabella's house that's perfect for eavesdropping on their parents. It's a small sitting nook on the second floor, right at the top of the stairs.
So you can hear everything that's going on. They'll have the door closed and you can hear murmurs. We're kind of in the shadow. Like, I know what's going on, but I don't know exact things.
What they've been overhearing for the last year and what they think of it this week.
This American Life is on tonight at 9 p.m.
I'm Jesse Thorne. You want some real, insightful conversations about where art comes from? Well, Bullseye has you covered, as long as you don't mind a little bit of ridiculousness.
Y'all was like really judging me though.
They sniffed it out. They sniffed out that I was weird.
I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna sit, just like in the movies.
Listen, learn, laugh. Bullseye from Maximum Fun and NPR.
Bullseye, Thursdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support comes from Houston Symphony, inviting you to celebrate the season with festive concerts at Jones Hall. From carols to family favorites, the Symphony has everything to make your holidays unforgettable. Details at houstonsymphony.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro. Introducing Metro Downtown Direct, helping riders get home for the holidays with non-stop service between downtown and Bush Intercontinental Airport. Details at ridemetro.org/500.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hank Green is a YouTuber, science communicator, author, comedian, and entrepreneur, known for producing and hosting several YouTube channels and podcasts, including the YouTube channel Vlog Brothers, which he hosts with his very own brother, best-selling author John Green, as well as also hosting the educational channels Crash Course and SciShow, just to name a few. Recently, Green was in Houston for a talk at Space Center Houston as part of their Thought Leaders series. Hello Houston producer Garrett Bohlmann was able to speak with Green at the center before he went on stage. So what initially sparked Hank Green's intellectual curiosity?
Oh, to the beginning. Yes. I don't know. I think that we all have intellectual curiosity that is sparked by our the way we exist. We have to be interested in the world around us or we don't get by. I think that can go in a lot of different directions, of course. And I think I was like enabled by a lot of great teachers and by my parents. My dad was the state director of the Nature Conservancy in Florida when I was growing up, which is a job that interfaces with a lot of things. But one of the things it interfaces with is working scientists. So biologists, ecologists, in the world, on the ground, doing like the everyday boring science that we don't think about, you know? Yeah. They're just like counting Gopher tortoise holes and figuring out how mosquitoes breed, you know, like things that are really important, but you're not like the beginning of the universe or smashing atoms or anything. And so I sort of like saw that like what science was just trying to figure out how to ask the universe a question and get an answer. And that's kind of something that we all do all the time anyway. But you could get paid for it in certain ways.
What drove you to start making educational content, especially online? I
mean, so there's like two answers to that question. One is that I needed to figure out something to make that day. So the first year my brother and I made content, we in 2007, we traded off weekdays. So I'd do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he'd do Tuesday, Thursday, or the opposite. And when you're making that much stuff, you have to come up with something to talk about. And one day, John did a video about the French Revolution, and I was like, well, fine. If we can do educational videos, here's one about the circulatory system. And that was sort of the first time we ever made anything educational, like intentionally educational. And those videos did really well. They were harder to make than the average thing that we were making at the time, but they did really well. And then like on top of that, I've always dreamed of this job, you know, because I was really inspired by science fiction novelists, by Carl Sagan, by, you know, when I was a kid, Mr. Wizard and Beekman. I was pre-Bill Nye, if you can believe that. And you know, those stories and how they found ways to take what we had learned and unlock it for the rest of the world was really wonderful. And, you know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a working scientist or if I wanted to do the thing where I like help people understand stuff, because I loved both. And I kind of let my life make that decision for me a little bit.
You mentioned so much content before already, and you know, just to name a few of the programs you're involved with: SciShow, Crash Course. You have Blog Brothers with your brother John. I guess I'm curious, how do you find the time to manage all of them?
My wife is here. Catherine, how do I find the time to do all of the things that I do? My wife says I'm just never not working.
Okay.
I also have lots of support. There's lots of people around who do a lot of the work for me. So I edit some of my videos. I don't edit most of them. You know, SciShow, I don't write most of those scripts. I mean, now I barely write anything. I do some like pitching and stuff, but so yeah, there's a whole company behind SciShow and Crash Course now. There's over 70 people who work on those shows, along with Eons, and we have a bunch of other shows. And so that's part of it. But my wife is right that like I love it so much that it doesn't feel like work. And so like the parts of my job that do feel like work, meetings, dealing with like a problem, you know, like a HR thing, dealing with like figuring out like having a lawyer meeting about how to structure a corporation, like that stuff is work. But then when I'm doing the part where I'm like making stuff, I'm writing a script or I'm hosting a video, all that stuff just feels like fun. And so I want to do as much of it as I can.
You found something that you like to do and you do it for a living.
Yeah. I would not do it as much if I did not enjoy it so much.
In addition to the projects that I mentioned before, you also co-founded VidCon with your brother John. Tell me how that started.
Well, I am a nerd, and so I had been to fan conventions as a fan. You know, I'd been to Harry Potter conventions, which was a thing, and I'd been to like anime fan things. And I've been to Penny Arcade Expo, which is like a video game kind of like crossover hybrid fan and industry event. And when YouTube was happening, and it like felt like it was really happening, like there were all these cool creators doing interesting things, building communities, and having, you know, what at the time felt like very big audiences, now probably wouldn't be seen as that big. And I was like, somebody's going to do this. Like, it makes perfect sense for this to be like a thing that has this kind of event around it. And I knew some people who ran a Harry Potter convention, and I asked them, I was like, hey, do you think this would work? And Melissa was like, yeah. And then within 24 hours, she was sending me like a list of potential venues. So that's really how it came together. Is like I like knew that there was a chance for it to happen, and I also knew someone who knew how to do it, which I certainly did not. And
it's grown into such a huge thing.
It's very big now. Yeah. And I'm not involved anymore. I just, you know, I go. I mean, online video became so much bigger than I ever expected it to. And that's actually been quite a challenge for VidCon to figure out. But I let go of it because it was so stressful. And also someone paid me for it. So I got to trade like the hardest thing in my life for money, which if you ever get a chance to do that, I would suggest it.
Okay. Well, thank you for the advice. This is Hello Houston. I'm Garrett Bohlmann, currently speaking with YouTuber, science communicator Hank Green here at Space Center Houston. As a science communicator, what are challenges today that you encounter that maybe you didn't whenever you first started making content?
I mean, there's like the answer to that question that's just like about me. So like I have a bigger audience now, and so I have to be more careful. I think that I am more thoughtful about the stuff I make. Certainly SciShow and Crash Course have way bigger sort of fact-checking infrastructure than they once did. So when you have a bigger responsibility, you have a bigger impact, you need bigger responsibility, you need to be more careful. But then there's like the way that the world has changed. And there've always been some things where science overlapped with politics. It just feels like that overlap has gotten bigger. So, you know, like when I was a kid, there was a pretty big overlap between like evolution and politics. Like, how should we teach evolution in schools? But now there's, you know, I find myself getting pulled more and more into that. And so I have to consciously decide whether or not I'm like a political actor in the world. Like, does like being a science communicator mean you're also a pundit? And when it comes to certain things, it's kind of very hard to avoid, like climate change. It's hard to avoid there. Like the science is very clear, but the politics isn't. With vaccines, the science is very clear, but the politics isn't. You know, that's like, I feel that overlap has expanded. And I think that if you're trying to just sort of be in, you can totally do it. You can just be like, I'm into space. I just want to talk about Mars all day. And like Mars doesn't overlap with politics that much. But the job does feel as if it has more political overlap than it once did.
Yeah, I imagine. Something I've noticed about your videos is when you're discussing something, you inject your own style of humor into a lot of the things you're discussing. Sure. Do you find that humor is an effective tool to make science not just more accessible, but also less intimidating?
Yeah, I mean, what I actually sort of see my job as is like ultimately deep down just keeping your attention. So like I want to tell you about plastics recycling, and there's one best way. You know, there's some best way in the world to have you care about that and keep paying attention through the whole process. To have you like care enough to click on the video, care enough to keep watching, care enough to like have the video end and you didn't even really realize that 10 minutes went by. That's my job. And so there's lots of tricks there, and humor is one of them. And I don't know how conscious it is, but like the deep down, the job is just like, how do I hold this person's attention in a world where, you know, their email's right there. There's a trillion cat videos that they could be watching right now. How do I keep them focused on plastics recycling right now? Yeah. When that's kind of it's not the most exciting topic. And it's like sitting next to some stuff that's like intentionally outrage bait. It's the competitive landscape of attention in the modern era is insane. And so that's how I see my job. And you know, one of the tools is humor. But really that's only coming out because I'm thinking kind of every moment, how do I not lose this person?
Yeah. I'm curious, has there ever been a subject or subjects that you've struggled with yourself, whether that be you struggled with how to figure out how to communicate about it, or just something that you just don't get?
Yeah, so like hard to communicate. I talk about this on Crash Course. So Crash Course is a show that we do that actually teaches that stuff you're supposed to learn in a class. And that's harder than something where I'm like, I'm going to choose whatever topic I think is actually most interesting. Because if you're teaching chemistry, you have to do the boring parts. You have to do, how do you name ionic compounds? You have to do stoichiometry. And sometimes you sort of enter into those parts and you're like, okay, well, today we're doing stoichiometry and it's just going to be stoichiometry. Like you have to, the reason you're watching this video ultimately is because you have to know this in order to, like, there's reasons why, and those reasons are exciting, but ultimately it's algebra. I'm teaching you a fancy kind of algebra and it's going to be kind of boring. But when it comes to like my personal limitations, yeah, like almost all of physics. I sort of pride myself on being a biology, chemistry, science communicator. I think there's a lot of biology and there's a lot of physics in science communication. Chemistry gets super ignored. And I'm like, that's what I want to do more of because it's so cool. And I love it so much. And I just don't, I feel like it's kind of the sort of like forgotten middle child of science.
Lastly, to anybody listening to this right now, any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave with them?
any time you get curious about something, just let yourself go. Like, follow it. You know, there's so much information out there in the world now, and there's just like no bad day in which you learn something new. You know, I mean, that's not totally true. I've had some bad days in which I learned something new, but I feel like I learn something new every day, and that's a real privilege.
You just heard YouTuber and science communicator Hank Green. He spoke with Hello Houston producer Garrett Bohlmann. And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversation. This is News 88.7. Have a great Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bohlmann, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Visit Galveston, highlighting holiday shopping in historic downtown Galveston, where the Strand and Post Office Street feature local shops, galleries, and antiques reflecting the island's coastal character. More at visitgalveston.com.
82 degrees and a slight chance